The first time anyone saw Delilah May Thornton in town, she was carrying a dead bear over her shoulder like it was a sack of potatoes. Blood dripped from the massive creature's snout onto her worn leather boots as she walked down Main Street, her wild gray hair catching the morning sun like silver wire. The banker's wife fainted right there on the sidewalk. 3 grown men stepped into doorways. Even the stray dogs scattered. But that wasn't the moment that changed everything. That came later, when they discovered what she'd been hiding up in those mountains for 37 years. When they learned why she'd chosen isolation over civilization. When they realized that the woman they dismissed as crazy, dangerous, and backwards had been protecting something more valuable than all their combined bank accounts. Some said she was touched in the head. Others whispered she was dangerous as a rattlesnake. The children dared each other to get close enough to touch her cabin fence, running away shrieking with delicious terror. The adults crossed themselves when her name came up in conversation, treating her like some kind of mountain witch who could curse their crops or steal their souls. They were all wrong. And, by the time they figured out just how wrong they were, Delilah May Thornton had already saved their entire world without them even knowing it was in danger. Delilah May Thornton had been living on Copper Ridge Mountain for 37 years when the government men came looking for her. She watched them through her rifle scope as they climbed the narrow deer trail that led to her cabin, their city shoes slipping on loose rock, their pressed uniforms already darkening with sweat. 3 of them, all carrying briefcases like they were heading to some boardroom meeting instead of tracking down a woman most folks considered half-feral. She set the rifle aside and waited. They'd find her when they found her. Wasn't like she was hiding, exactly. Her cabin sat right there in the clearing, smoke curling up from the chimney, vegetable garden spread out like a green quilt in front of the porch. Solar panels she'd installed herself gleamed on the south-facing roof. Rain barrels lined up neat as soldiers along the foundation. Everything about the place screamed self-sufficiency, from the hand-split shingles to the root cellar dug deep into the hillside. The youngest of the 3 men emerged from the tree line first, gulping air like a landed fish. Government types never did learn how to pace themselves at altitude. He spotted her sitting in the porch rocker, froze for a half-second, then nudged his companions and pointed. "Ms. Thornton?" The oldest one called out, approaching with the careful steps of a man who'd heard stories. "I'm Agent Peterson, EPA. These are my colleagues, Agent Rodriguez and Dr. Kim. We'd like to speak with you about your property." Delilah May continued rocking, hands folded in her lap. She wore her usual outfit, canvas pants patched at the knees, flannel shirt with the sleeves rolled up showing arms corded with muscle, boots that had walked 10,000 mountain miles. Her hair hung in a single thick braid shot through with silver, and her dark eyes missed nothing. At 58, she could still outwork men half her age and outshoot most anyone in 3 counties. "Property's not for sale," she said without preamble. Her voice carried the slow cadence of mountain folk, each word considered before speaking. "We're not looking to buy." Peterson climbed the porch steps with visible effort. "We're here about the mining company that wants to develop this area. Apex Industries has filed papers with the county. They're planning to strip mine this entire ridge." That got her attention. The rocking stopped. "Come again?" Dr. Kim, a small Asian woman with wire-rimmed glasses, stepped forward with her briefcase. "Apex has mineral rights to most of this mountain. Copper, zinc, some rare earth elements. They're proposing an open-pit operation that would, well, it would level everything from here to Black Creek Valley." "Level it." Delilah May's words came out flat as hammered iron. "The trees, the topsoil, your cabin, everything," Rodriguez confirmed. He was younger than the other 2, with the eager manner of someone still believing his job made a difference. They'd basically scrape off the top 1,000 feet of mountain. Delilah May stood up slow, her full height impressive even without the rifle. 6 feet tall in her stocking feet, broad through the shoulders, hands scarred from decades of hard work. The kind of woman who could split wood all morning and hunt all afternoon without breaking a sweat. "And you folks are here because?" "Because you're the only landowner on this ridge who hasn't sold out," Peterson said. "Your 160 acres sits right in the middle of their proposed operation. Without your land, they can't proceed. She walked to the porch railing, looked out over the forest that rolled away in every direction like a green ocean. Somewhere down there, a woodpecker drummed against dead pine. Hawks circled overhead, riding the thermals. Spring had come early this year, and the mountainside blazed with wildflowers and new growth. "What kind of offer they making?" she asked. Dr. Kim opened her briefcase, pulled out a thick folder. $2.7 million. That got a laugh out of Delilah May, short and sharp as a gunshot. $2.7 million. For all this. She gestured at the wilderness spreading out below them. These people got any idea what they're trying to destroy? Actually, that's why we're here, Dr. Kim said, adjusting her glasses. We've been doing some preliminary surveys in this area. Environmental impact assessments. And we've found some unusual things. What kind of unusual? The three agents exchanged glances. Peterson cleared his throat. Miss Thornton, how long have you lived on this mountain? 37 years, 4 months, 16 days. She didn't have to think about it. Came up here when I was 21 years old and never had cause to leave. In all that time, have you noticed anything strange about the local wildlife? The plant life? Anything that seemed different from what you might expect? Delilah May studied their faces, reading the tension there like animal tracks in mud. City folks always had tells. Always gave themselves away. Different how? Rodriguez stepped forward eagerly. We've documented several species here that don't exist anywhere else. Plants, insects, even a few bird subspecies that appear to be completely unique to this specific ecosystem. It's like this mountain is some kind of isolated evolutionary laboratory. And the soil samples, Dr. Kim added, pulling out a tablet computer. The mineral composition is unlike anything we've seen. There are trace elements here that don't appear on any periodic table. Compounds that seem to have unusual properties. Delilah May kept her face perfectly neutral, but, inside, her heart started beating faster. They were getting close to things that needed staying hidden. Things she'd been protecting for 37 years without fully understanding why. "You think I'm some kind of scientist," she said. "I grow vegetables and hunt deer. Don't know nothing about minerals and such." "But, you must have noticed something," Dr. Kim pressed. "The health of the forest here is remarkable. Old growth trees that should have been logged out generations ago. Wildlife populations that are thriving while similar habitats elsewhere are struggling. This place is special, Miss Thornton. Scientifically significant." Special was one word for it. Delilah May had been calling it other things for most of her adult life. Blessed, maybe. Cursed, on the bad days. Magic, when she was feeling fanciful. She'd come up this mountain running from a broken heart and a broken life, figured to live alone until the loneliness or the wilderness killed her. Instead, she'd found something that changed everything she thought she knew about the world. "Suppose it is special," she said carefully. "What's that got to do with mining companies and government agents?" Peterson spread his hands. "If we can prove this area has significant scientific value, we might be able to block the mining operation. Get it designated as a protected habitat. Maybe even a national preserve. Course, that would mean your property would be tied up in federal regulations," Rodriguez added. "No more private ownership. Government oversight. Regular inspections. Scientists coming and going." The hawk had settled in a dead pine about 50 yards away, watching the humans with bright intelligent eyes. Delilah May had seen that particular bird every day for the past 3 years. Same white blaze on its chest, same notch in its left wing from some long ago encounter with buckshot. 3 years was a long time for a hawk to stay in one territory. Hell, it was a long time for a hawk to live, period. Most folks didn't notice things like that. They saw a hawk, thought bird, and moved on. But Delilah May had been watching this mountain's wildlife for 37 years, and she'd learned to pay attention to details that didn't quite fit the normal patterns. "Government preserve," she mused. "That mean I'd have to leave?" "Not necessarily," Dr. Kim said quickly. There are precedents for grandfathered residence rights. You could stay, but there would be restrictions. No hunting. No harvesting of native plants. No alterations to the landscape. No hunting meant no fresh meat. No plant harvesting meant no wild medicines, no roots and berries that supplemented her garden crops through the long winters. No landscape alterations meant no expanding her water collection system or clearing new garden plots as the soil played out. It meant living like a museum exhibit instead of living free. And if I just sell to the mining company instead? Then, this mountain disappears forever, Dr. Kim said. Along with whatever unique species are living here. Along with any scientific discoveries we might make. 200 years from now, this will all be just a big hole in the ground. Delilah May rocked back on her heels, considering. The agents waited, probably thinking they'd given her plenty to chew over. City folks always thought mountain people needed time to process simple ideas. Truth was, she'd been expecting something like this for years. You couldn't keep secrets forever, especially secrets as big as the one living on Copper Ridge Mountain. Eventually, somebody was going to notice the things that didn't add up. The animals that lived too long. The plants that grew in impossible soil. The way the whole ecosystem seemed to pulse with something more than natural life. The question was what she intended to do about it. Tell you what, she said finally. You folks seem decent enough. How about you stay for dinner, and we'll talk some more. Got a pot of venison stew on the stove, cornbread in the oven. Real food, not that processed nonsense you get in town. The agents looked at each other uncertainly. Peterson checked his watch. We were planning to drive back tonight. Road gets dangerous after dark, Delilah May said. Especially for folks don't know it. Washouts from the spring rains. Places where the shoulder drops off into nothing. You're welcome to camp here tonight, head down in the morning when you can see what you're doing. It wasn't really an invitation. It was a test. Stay and eat her food, sleep under her mountain sky, and she'd know they were serious about protecting this place. Drive off into the night like scared children, and she'd know they were just another bunch of government bureaucrats who'd disappear once the paperwork got complicated. Rodriguez looked eager. Dr. Kim seemed intrigued. Peterson looked like he was calculating per diem rates and overtime pay. That's very kind of you, Dr. Kim said before Peterson could decline. We'd be honored. Honored. Delilah May liked that. Most folks used words like grateful or obliged when she offered hospitality. Honored suggested they understood this was her domain, her rules, her mountain. Good, she said. Y'all can set up your tents down by the creek. Fresh water, level ground. Just mind the garden plots on your way down. As the agents gathered their gear and headed toward the creek, Delilah May remained on the porch, watching the hawk in the dead pine. It cocked its head at her, and, for just a moment, she could have sworn it nodded. 37 years she'd been keeping secrets. Maybe it was time to start sharing them. But, first, she needed to decide which secrets were safe to tell. That night, sitting around her fire pit with the 3 government agents, Delilah May made a decision that would change everything. Not the decision they expected, and not the one she'd thought she'd make when they first climbed up her mountain. But, watching Dr. Kim's eyes light up when she talked about the unique species they'd found, seeing Rodriguez's genuine concern for the ecosystem, even witnessing Peterson's grudging respect for her self-sufficient lifestyle, she realized these weren't just bureaucrats looking to pad their resumes. These were people who might actually understand what they were dealing with. You want to know about unusual wildlife, she said, poking the fire with a long stick. Sparks rose into the star-filled sky, joining the constellations that looked brighter and more numerous up here than they ever did in town. Follow me. She led them away from the fire, past her cabin, into the woods behind her property. Their flashlight beams danced across tree trunks and undergrowth, but Delilah May walked sure-footed in the darkness, following a path she'd traveled 10,000 times. Miss Thornton, Peterson called after her, breathing hard. Maybe we should wait until morning. It's pretty dark out here. Dark's when you see the real magic, she said without slowing down. Y'all wanted unusual. Well, unusual don't punch a time clock. The path led upward, winding between massive pines and moss-covered boulders. After 20 minutes of climbing, Delilah May stopped at what looked like a natural clearing. Moonlight filtered through the canopy, illuminating a grove of trees unlike anything the agents had ever seen. The trunks were silver white, smooth as polished marble, reaching up toward the sky in perfectly straight columns. The leaves were the wrong color, a deep purple that looked almost black in the moonlight. And there was a sound coming from the grove, a low humming like electrical current running through power lines. "What are those?" Dr. Kim whispered, aiming her flashlight beam at the nearest tree. "Don't rightly know," Delilah May said. "Been calling them the singing trees for 37 years, but that's just my name for them. Never seen anything like them anywhere else." Rodriguez pulled out some kind of scientific instrument, a device that beeped and chirped as he pointed it at the trees. "The electromagnetic readings are off the charts," he muttered. "It's like they're generating their own energy field." "Energy field's right," Delilah May said. "Watch this." She walked up to the nearest tree and placed her palm flat against the smooth bark. Immediately, the humming grew louder, and the purple leaves began to glow with a soft inner light. The effect spread from tree to tree like ripples in a pond, until the entire grove was lit up like a natural cathedral. All three agents stood there with their mouths open, trying to process what they were seeing. "How is this possible?" Dr. Kim breathed. "Don't know that either," Delilah May said, pulling her hand away. The glow faded gradually, leaving them in moonlit darkness again. "Found this grove my second year up here. Been studying it ever since, in my own way. Trees don't grow anywhere else on the mountain. Can't get seeds from them to sprout. Can't even cut off a branch without it withering inside an hour." Peterson finally found his voice. "Have you told anyone else about this?" "Who would I tell? And who would believe me?" Delilah May started walking back toward the cabin. "Besides, what do you think would happen if word got out? You'd have every scientist and government agency in the country tramping through here. News crews. Tourists. Probably the military, thinking they could weaponize it somehow." That thought seemed to sober all three agents. They followed her back through the woods in silence, each lost in their own calculations of what they'd just witnessed. Back at the fire, Delilah May poured coffee from a blue enamel pot and passed around tin cups. The coffee was strong enough to wake the dead, the way mountain coffee was supposed to be. "There's more," she said without preamble. "Lots more. But, before I show you, I need to know what kind of people you really are." "What do you mean?" Rodriguez asked. "I mean, are you the kind of government folks who see something incredible and immediately start thinking about how to control it, study it, exploit it? Or are you the kind who understand that some things are bigger than human ambition?" The three agents exchanged glances. Peterson spoke first, his bureaucrat's caution evident in every word. "Miss Thornton, anything of significant scientific value needs to be properly documented and protected. That's not exploitation, that's responsible stewardship." Responsible stewardship. Delilah May tasted the phrase like wine. That's a fine-sounding phrase. But, what's it mean in practical terms? Dr. Kim leaned forward earnestly. "It means making sure discoveries like this benefit all humanity, not just private interests. It means protecting unique ecosystems from destruction. It means advancing our understanding of the natural world. And it means making sure places like this don't get turned into mining operations," Rodriguez added. "Even if that requires some government oversight." Delilah May nodded slowly. That was the answer she'd been hoping for, but she needed to be sure. "Let me tell you how I ended up on this mountain," she said. "Then, you'll understand why your answer matters so much." She settled back in her chair, cradling the hot coffee cup in both hands. The fire crackled between them, throwing dancing shadows across their faces. "I came up here in 1987, she began. 21 years old, fresh out of college with a degree in environmental science and a head full of ideas about saving the world. Had a job lined up with the Forest Service, a boyfriend who was going to marry me, a whole life planned out. She paused, staring into the flames. Then, I found out the job was just pushing papers. The Forest Service cared more about logging quotas than protecting forests. My boyfriend wanted me to quit work once we got married, stay home and raise babies while he climbed the corporate ladder. And everybody kept telling me I was too idealistic, too naive, too emotional about environmental issues. Peterson shifted uncomfortably. Dr. Kim nodded with understanding. Rodriguez just listened. So I ran, Delilah May continued. Took my truck and my camping gear and drove until I found a place that felt right. Ended up here, on land nobody else wanted because it was too remote, too rugged, too far from everything civilized people thought they needed. She took a sip of coffee, gathering her thoughts. First year was hell. Nearly starved to death that first winter. Cabin was just a one-room shack with gaps between the logs big enough to throw a cat through. But I was stubborn. Figured if I was going to fail, I'd fail on my own terms. What changed? Dr. Kim asked quietly. Second spring, I found the singing trees. And that's when I realized this mountain was something special. Started paying closer attention to everything around me. The way plants grew here. How the animals behaved. The weather patterns. The soil composition. She gestured toward the dark forest surrounding them. This place is alive in ways that don't make scientific sense. At least not according to any science I learned in college. There are ecosystems within ecosystems here. Relationships between species that shouldn't exist. Chemical processes happening in the soil that would make biochemists weep. You've been studying it all these years? Rodriguez asked. On your own? Learning it, Delilah May corrected. There's a difference between studying something and learning to live with it. Scientists study things from the outside, trying to break them down into measurable parts. I've been living inside this ecosystem for 37 years, becoming part of it. She stood up and walked to the edge of the firelight, looking out into the forest. You want to know why I haven't sold to the mining company? Why I'm not jumping at $2.7 million? Because I've got something up here worth more than money. I've got responsibility. Responsibility to what? Peterson asked. To the secret I've been keeping. The real reason this mountain is so special. She turned back to face them, her expression serious as Judgment Day. Tomorrow morning, if you're still here, if you're still listening, I'll show you something that will change everything you think you know about the natural world. But once you see it, there's no going back. You'll be part of the secret, part of the responsibility. What kind of secret? Dr. Kim whispered. Delilah May smiled for the first time since the agents had arrived. It was the kind of smile that held 37 years of wonder, fear, love, and absolute determination. The kind that explains why this mountain can't be strip-mined. Why it can't be turned into a government preserve with boardwalks and visitor centers. Why it needs to stay exactly as it is, protected by someone who understands what protection really means. She walked back to her chair and sat down. The kind of secret that proves some things are too important to trust to committees and bureaucrats and mining companies. Some things need a guardian. The fire popped, sending another shower of sparks toward the stars. Somewhere in the darkness beyond the clearing, an owl called. The sound echoed off the mountainside like a question waiting for an answer. Sleep on it, Delilah May said. In the morning, we'll see what kind of people you really are. But she was already pretty sure she knew. She'd seen the wonder in their eyes when the trees started glowing. She'd heard the genuine concern in their voices when they talked about protecting the ecosystem. These weren't the kind of government agents who would exploit what she was about to show them. These were the kind who might actually help her protect it. For 37 years, Delilah May Thornton had been the sole guardian of Copper Ridge Mountain's greatest secret. Tomorrow, if everything went according to plan, she wouldn't be guarding it alone anymore. The owl called again, and, this time, something deep in the forest called back. Dawn came early to Copper Ridge Mountain, the way it always did. Delilah May was already up, coffee brewing and breakfast cooking when the three agents emerged from their tents by the creek. She watched them through her kitchen window as they splashed cold mountain water on their faces and tried to work the kinks out of backs that weren't used to sleeping on the ground. City folks never did learn how to camp properly. By the time they made it up to the cabin, she had eggs, bacon, and fresh biscuits waiting on the table. Real food to fuel them for what was coming. They'd need all their strength for what she was about to show them. "Sleep well?" she asked, though she could see from their faces that they hadn't. Too much excitement, too many questions spinning through their heads. The singing trees had that effect on people the first time they witnessed them. "As well as could be expected," Peterson said diplomatically. "Miss Thornton, about last night." "Eat first," she interrupted, setting plates in front of them. "Talk after. That's mountain hospitality, and it served me well for 37 years. They ate in the kind of comfortable silence that comes when people are processing something too big for casual conversation. Dr. Kim kept glancing toward the tree line where they'd walked the night before, like she was trying to convince herself it had really happened. Rodriguez cleaned his plate twice and asked for more biscuits. Even Peterson seemed to relax a little, the mountain morning working its magic on his city-tight shoulders. After breakfast, Delilah May led them in a different direction than the night before. This time they headed downhill, following an old game trail that wound through stands of oak and maple toward the heart of the mountain. The morning air was crisp with the promise of spring, full of birdsong and the scent of wildflowers blooming in hidden meadows. "Where are we going?" Dr. Kim asked after they'd been walking for 20 minutes. "To the source," Delilah May said. "The reason everything else exists." The trail led them through increasingly dense forest, past ancient trees that must have been growing when the first settlers crossed the mountains. Delilah May moved through the wilderness like she was walking through her own living room, never hesitating at trail junctions, never pausing to get her bearings. This was her domain, every rock and root and fallen log as familiar as old friends. After an hour of walking, they came to a cliff face that rose straight up from the forest floor like a natural wall. Water trickled down the rock face in thin streams, feeding a series of pools that overflowed into a creek running down the mountainside. "Natural spring," Rodriguez observed, kneeling beside one of the pools. "The water's incredibly clear." "More than clear," Delilah May said. "Take a closer look." Dr. Kim produced a small instrument from her backpack and dipped it into the water. The device immediately started beeping rapidly. "The mineral content is extraordinary," she murmured, reading the display. "There are compounds here I don't recognize. Elements that shouldn't exist in this concentration." "Drink some," Delilah May suggested. All three agents looked at her with alarm. Peterson spoke first. "Without proper testing? That could be dangerous." "Could be," Delilah May agreed. "Been drinking it for 37 years, though." "Seems to agree with me." She knelt beside the largest pool, cupped her hands, and took a long drink. The water was cold and clean, with a taste like liquid starlight. She'd never found words to properly describe that taste, though she'd tried many times over the years. "It won't hurt you," she said, wiping her mouth with the back of her hand. "Might change you, though. Fair warning." Rodriguez was the first to try it, his scientific curiosity overcoming his caution. He dipped his hands in the pool and brought the water to his lips. His eyes went wide immediately. "It's..." He started, then trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Dr. Kim and Peterson followed suit, each taking tentative sips. Dr. Kim gasped softly. Peterson just stared at the water like he was seeing it for the first time. "What is this?" Dr. Kim whispered. "Best I can figure, it's the reason everything on this mountain is different," Delilah May said. "The trees, the animals, the soil, all of it. This spring feeds into the groundwater system that nourishes the whole ecosystem." She stood up and walked closer to the cliff face, running her hand along the wet rock. "But that's not the real secret. The real secret is what's behind this cliff." "Behind it?" Peterson looked confused. "You mean there's a cave system?" "Something like that. Delilah May began walking along the base of the cliff, the others following. About 100 yards down, she stopped at what looked like a solid wall of rock. "Help me move this." She began pulling aside branches and debris that had been carefully arranged to look natural. Underneath was a narrow opening in the cliff face, just wide enough for a person to squeeze through sideways. "You've got to be kidding," Peterson muttered. "No joke," Delilah May said. "This is where it gets interesting." She produced a powerful flashlight from her pack and squeezed through the opening. After a moment of hesitation, the three agents followed her into the mountain. The passage was narrow at first, forcing them to move single file through cool darkness. But, after 30 feet, it opened into a cavern that took their breath away. The chamber was vast, easily 100 feet across and twice as high. But it wasn't empty darkness that filled the space. It was light. Living light that pulsed and flowed like water, emanating from crystalline formations that grew from the walls and ceiling like frozen waterfalls. "Sweet Mother of God," Rodriguez breathed. The crystals were unlike anything in any geology textbook. They grew in impossible spirals and curves, some as thin as hair, others thick as tree trunks. And all of them glowed with that same inner light they'd seen in the singing trees, but 100 times brighter. "What are they?" Dr. Kim asked, her voice echoing in the vast space. "Don't rightly know," Delilah May said, playing her flashlight beam across the formations. "Been calling them the heart crystals, since they seem to be the heart of everything that happens on this mountain." She led them deeper into the cavern, past formations that defied every law of physics and chemistry they thought they knew. Some of the crystals chimed softly when air moved past them, creating a music more beautiful than any human orchestra. Others pulsed in rhythm with something that might have been a heartbeat, if mountains could have hearts. "The spring water flows through here," Delilah May explained, pointing to channels carved in the cavern floor where luminous water ran between the crystal formations. "Picks up whatever it is these things put into it, then carries it out to feed the whole mountain." Peterson had pulled out his phone and was trying to take pictures, but the strange light didn't register properly on the camera. The images came out as shapeless blurs of color. "This is impossible," he kept muttering. "This violates everything we know about mineralogy." "That's what I figured when I first found it," Delilah May said. "Took me years to stop trying to understand it scientifically and start appreciating it for what it is." "Which is what?" Dr. Kim asked. Delilah May was quiet for a long moment, listening to the crystal chimes and watching the flowing light. "Magic," she said finally. "Real, honest-to-God magic. The kind that makes life bigger and more wonderful than human beings usually get to experience." She walked over to one of the larger crystal formations and placed her palm against its surface. Immediately, the entire cavern blazed with increased light, and the chiming grew to a symphony that seemed to resonate in their bones. "It responds to living things," she said. "Been coming down here for 37 years, and it always recognizes me. Like we're old friends." Rodriguez had pulled out more scientific instruments and was taking readings, but the numbers on his devices were jumping around so wildly they were meaningless. "The energy output is incredible," he said. "Whatever these crystals are made of, they're generating more power than a small nuclear reactor." "And if Apex Industries strip mines this mountain?" Dr. Kim asked quietly. "Gone forever," Delilah May said, pulling her hand away from the crystal. The light dimmed back to its normal level. "Along with everything that depends on it. The trees, the animals, the ecosystem, all of it would die when the heart crystals are destroyed." The three agents stood in the glowing cavern, each trying to process the magnitude of what they were seeing. This wasn't just a unique geological formation. This was something that would rewrite textbooks, change humanity's understanding of what was possible in the natural world. "Miss Thornton," Peterson said finally, his bureaucrat's training reasserting itself, "this discovery is too important to keep hidden. The scientific community needs to know about this. The government needs to protect it." "Protect it how?" Delilah May asked. "With fences and guards and visitor centers? With teams of scientists taking samples and measurements and trying to figure out how to replicate it in laboratories? With proper preservation protocols," Peterson insisted. This place needs to be studied, documented, understood. Some things can't be understood that way, Delilah May said. Some things just need to be left alone to do what they do. She began walking back toward the cavern entrance. I've shown you the secret. Now you need to decide what you're going to do with it. But, remember this, for 37 years, this place has been thriving under my protection. I never tried to exploit it, never tried to change it, never tried to figure out how to make money from it. I just let it be. They followed her back through the narrow passage and out into the morning sunlight, each lost in their own thoughts. The normal world of trees and rocks and birdsong seemed pale and diminished after the glory of the crystal cavern. Back at the cabin, Delilah May made more coffee and they sat on the porch in contemplative silence. Finally, Dr. Kim spoke. "What do you want from us?" she asked. "Same thing I've been doing for 37 years, Delilah May said. Protection. But not the kind that comes with government oversight and scientific study. The kind that comes from people who understand that some things are too precious to mess with." "You want us to help you keep it secret?" Rodriguez asked. "I want you to help me find a way to stop the mining without destroying what makes this place special." She rocked forward in her chair, suddenly intense. "There's got to be some way to protect the mountain that doesn't involve turning it into a research facility or a tourist attraction." Peterson was already making calculations. "If we can document enough rare species, get the area designated as critical habitat, we might be able to block the mining without revealing the unusual features." "The crystals would still be there," Dr. Kim pointed out. "Sooner or later, someone would find them." "Not if the right people were watching over the mountain," Delilah May said meaningfully. "People who understood what they were protecting and why." The three agents looked at each other, and something passed between them. A decision, maybe. Or a commitment. "What exactly are you proposing?" Peterson asked. Delilah May smiled, and, for the first time in 37 years, she didn't feel like she was carrying the weight of the world alone. "I'm proposing we become partners," she said. "You help me stop the mining, and I'll help you make sure this mountain stays protected forever. Not as a government preserve, not as a research site, but as something rarer and more valuable." "Which is?" "A place where magic still exists in the world," she said. "And where people are smart enough to leave it alone." 6 months later, Apex Industries withdrew their mining proposal after environmental impact studies revealed 17 endangered species living on Copper Ridge Mountain. The area was quietly purchased by a private conservation foundation and placed under permanent protection, with Delilah May Thornton as its sole resident and guardian. The foundation's board of directors consisted of 3 former government agents who had learned the difference between preservation and protection. They visited the mountain regularly, but they never brought anyone else. They never published papers about their findings. They never tried to study or document or understand the magic living in the heart of the mountain. They just made sure it stayed safe. And, in town, people still told stories about the crazy mountain woman who lived alone in the wilderness. They said she was touched in the head, dangerous as a rattlesnake, probably practicing witchcraft up there in her isolated cabin. They were wrong about the crazy part. They were wrong about the dangerous part. But they were absolutely right about the magic.